also, it's important that businesses understand that the personal data that they handle, it doesn't belong to them.
The question of data is very important for us in all culture, in all civilization, in business, in anything that we do. Because if we don't have data, we will not be able to build the society that we build.
We as individuals need to exercise much more choice and control over the personal data that we own, that belongs to us, and organisations need to demonstrate trust and accountability in using that data that we entrust them with. The big tech firms have a different view. Opportunity of being here. So I'm Christina Tueje. I'm a privacy professional. I've been working in this space for 15 plus years. And what that means in terms of the work that I do is I work with organisations and I make sure that they are compliant with GDPR, data protection, cybersecurity, and AI regulation and legislation. Enabling organisations to respond to individuals when they exercise their privacy rights under the legislation.
All right, thank you so much for that. Okay, maybe we need to move to Gloria now.
Hi, yes, I'm also a privacy professional, and I've been working in privacy now for just over 14 years in various different industries, from construction, insurance, gaming, tech, and consumer. So I have a vast amount of experience in different areas. That's the great thing about data protection. It applies in almost every organisation. And yes, so I'm very excited to be here today. I'm very excited to talk about the Black Privacy Professional Network and to get the work that we are doing out there. So lovely to meet you.
That's lovely. This is not a topic that we talk about quite often, but I think it is very important that we're able to talk about it. You're talking of GDPR and all the rest. People, of course, should know what these are, how they work, and talking about privacy, data protection, and all of that. These are mouthful of content that need to be expanded. But first, why should people even learn about it? Okay, white people, we are looking at mostly people in the business environment because that is what we are mostly concentrating on. So why would people in the business environment know about privacy or professional privacy as it were?
One, I always like to start with, it's the law, but also it's important that businesses understand that the personal data that they handle, it doesn't belong to them. It belongs to the individuals, ourselves, data subjects. It's our data. And we need to have trust and belief that the organisations that are handling our data will do so in a responsible way and protect it and will not do anything with that data that can cause us any harm or individuals any harm. So it's really important for organisations to get it right. And that's what our job is, to kind of work as an internal regulator within those organisations, make sure that they're doing the right things by our individuals' data. So it's really important in that aspect that they respect the principles of the data protection laws. And secondly, individuals have rights when it comes to how personal data is handled within their organisation. So all individuals where their personal data is handled by an organisation have rights. And those rights can be exercised, and an organisation must abide by those rights. So it's very important that there's a really good relationship between the organisation and the individuals when it comes to their personal data being processed.
All
I
right.
hope that answered the question.
Yeah, you do. Thank you so much for that, Gloria. All right, let's move to Christina. So what would you say about how does it even work? Let's start from there, because now every now and then we have maybe a form online that we need to fill with our information, and then we need to sort of tick a point to say I agree or don't agree. Of course, you know that we are putting more information there all the time. And Gloria was saying whether the company should know that this data do not belongs to you. So first, give us a kind of a background of how this privacy work within the business environment.
Wow, that's a big question. But in terms of the work that I do, I tend to work with organisations as a trusted partner. I encourage organisations, as Gloria says, to the starting point is for organisations to genuinely, authentically and ethically respect the fact that the data that we as individuals trust organisations with belongs to organisations. So there are a number of principles, if you like, data protection principles that organisations must abide by to demonstrate their commitment to respecting data. One of the key data protection principles is around transparency and accountability. And one of the main ways for organisations to demonstrate that they are accountable and transparent with data processing is through the development of a privacy notice, a website privacy notice that typically pops up when we all go onto a website, and it should tell people this is an opportunity. The website privacy notice is an opportunity for the organisation to tell people about the personal data that they are processing, why they are processing it, individuals' rights with regards to the data that's being processed, how people can complain if they're not happy about the way the organisation is processing their data, and so on. So, I mean, there are so many things that I can say in this space in terms of what organisations should be doing to demonstrate compliance, but having an up-to-date, for organisations to have an up-to-date website privacy notice is a very, very useful place to start.
All right. I'll ask another question there before I move to Gloria. And this question is about, of course, Gloria was hitting on it before, but who really owns the data that we entered online? Is it us as the people who information is about, or the person who is collecting the information, in this case, the businesses, maybe the big corporate organization? Who owns those data?
Well, the correct answer is our personal data, our individual personal data, as Gloria quite rightly said, belongs to us as individuals. And the legal term for that is data subject. So we as natural living individuals, we are data subjects, we have personal data, we own personal data. So when organisations use that personal data, organisations need to remember that we are trusting them to use that data, which actually belongs to us. The law and the legislation, the regulation recognises this. This is actually mainly why GDPR was, it was developed and has come to the forefront. GDPR, the cornerstone and underpinning principle is that GDPR and related legislation recognises that we as individuals need to exercise much more choice and control over the personal data that we own, that belongs to us, and organisations need to demonstrate trust and accountability in using that data that we entrust them with. The big tech firms have a different view. A lot of the big tech firms believe that once they've obtained our data, it belongs to them and it's up to them, and they believe that they can, exercise autonomy in doing whatever they like with the data. But data protection legislation is against all of that. And it's very important that us as individuals remember that we can challenge organisations that abuse our data, and organisations must remember that our personal data that we entrust them with belongs to us as individual data subjects.
All right, that is important. That is a fine line that really need to be treated. Okay, maybe I need to pass the question to Gloria at this point. Of course, any of you can respond to it. if the data actually belongs to us and we have this big corporation, for example, let's look at OpenAI with the ChatGPT and all the millions of people that are using it today. Or we can even talk of Google. How many times have we seen Mark Zuckerberg, for example, coming to testify before in the US Congress, talking about data? And Google, of course, have come up a number of occasions under fire because of how they use people's data, talking of privacy, and the selling of the data for people, because these are really giant corporations whose business is entirely about data, collecting data, aggregating it, using it, and sometimes selling it, because of course they sell it to be able to make money. So a small individual somewhere in Italy or somewhere in Germany or somewhere in New York, a small individual, and you are telling me that this small individual is the owner of, is so part of that data. How are you going to be able to maybe tell that company, you violated my right, so you cannot use my data as an individual? So that is where I'm sort of having a perplexity. What do you say about that?
So I guess one of the key things as well is mentioning that the data belongs to us. And I think for individuals, everyone that's listening, when you are going to share your data, you have to be aware to who you're sharing it with. And this is when Christina mentioned about the privacy notices on websites. It's really important to read it and understand what's going to happen with your data. Because yes, the data does belong to us. However, it depends on what, I guess the word is legal basis. Let's use legal technical terminology. What is the legal basis that organization is going to be using that data? So it could be consent. It could be legal basis. It could be there's a legal reason for why they're collecting that data. So yes, it belongs to us, but we really need to be clear as to what sometimes we consented to. And this often is the case with apps. A lot of apps, they have, they want to, you go in the app, it's free, and you think, oh, brilliant. But often if you read the notices, they're going to want to do a lot with your information. So you do have that choice. You do have that right to share your information with organization or not to share it. But once you share it, they might want to do certain things with that information. So when it comes to our rights, there are some rights that are absolute. So, for example, if you share your information for marketing, and then you later say, actually, you know what, I don't want to receive marketing from this company, you have the absolute right to say, I withdraw my consent, I take it back, please stop the marketing. And organizations have to abide by that. But there might be some situations where you've already shared your information and they might use a legitimate interest. So, for example, you might be insured, and you might have a car accident and they want to share that information with another company, or you owe money and they might want to share that information with a bailiff, and you might say, no, you can't do that with my information. Well, yes, it's your information, but the organization will have a business reason, a legitimate reason to share that information further on. So there's all these nuances. So that's why it's very, very important before you share your data, before you go on a website, that you read those privacy notices, those pop-ups. They're there for a reason, to inform you about what the organization is going to do with your data. So once you read that and understand that, and then you're clear on that, then it's up to you. You'll have a choice to share that information. But yes, it belongs to you, but some organizations might have reasons to use your information. And later on, you might not prefer it that way, but they might have a legal reason to continue using your information like that. But it's really important to understand that some rights are not completely absolute. So, for example, there's a right to delete. Yes, you have that right. But if the organization has a legal legal obligation to keep your information, then you can't delete that information. So, for example, your doctor's surgery, you might have your medical information on there and you might think, oh, you know what, I don't want that on there, I'm going to ask them to delete it. Well, they have a legal obligation to keep that on there. So it's really important as individuals to start to understand what your rights are, where your data is, and also be mindful before sharing your data, because there might be these different nuances and different relationships you have with organizations. So yeah. You want to add anything there?
Yeah, I'd definitely love to add to that. Yeah. Thank you, Gloria. So these rights are they're serious. They are important, and regulators do take these when individuals exercise their privacy rights, regulators do sit up and take notice and take this very seriously. And I can share a very recent example with your listeners from Munich. It was a case that I read about recently, like this week. So it's a very, very recent case. A man in Munich, I believe he registered for a conference that the European Commission had organised. So this gentleman in Munich had registered for, I think, an online conference organised by the European Commission. And it transpired that this particular gentleman's data and all the other delegates that registered, it transpired that from a data processing point of view, delegates' registration data ended up leaving Germany, leaving Munich. And this particular gentleman questioned it and challenged it. And the regulator determined that the Munich gentleman was right to ask the question, and he was right to talk about non-material damage, the non-material damage that this delegate had suffered as a result of his data leaving Germany without his consent, without prior knowledge. And he was awarded, I think, €400 because his data left Germany and there was no transparency around that, no consent, no lawful basis, to use Gloria's term. So, the privacy rights are there for us to be exercised, and no matter how trivial listeners may think these privacy rights are, they are there for us to exercise as individuals, and regulators do take notice when we do exercise our rights. And I think that particular case sends out a very important message, because this particular gentleman, this man from Munich, let's call him, he basically challenged data processing on the premise that his data left Germany, and he did not give consent to that, and he was awarded €400. Sends out a very powerful message.
Yeah. Can I just also add as well, and with that example, it also shows why it's really important for organisations, when people do exercise their rights, that if they believe that in certain situations those rights don't need to be fulfilled, that they explain why. So, for example, if someone wants to ask to delete their data, they need to explain why they cannot delete their data if they choose not to. So, yes, individuals definitely have a right to request, but organisations have a must respond to individuals, either to fulfil that request, but if they have sort of legal reasons as to not fulfilling those requests, they must be very clear and communicate to individuals why they are not allowing them to exercise those rights in those sense, or complete those rights in terms of deletion. But that's a really good example there. And it's also really important to show that organisations must be very clear in their privacy notices exactly what they're doing with people's data. Because I'm sure in that case, it probably wasn't mentioned at all that they were sharing their data outside Germany. So, yeah, it's really important.
All right. Thank you so much for that, for both of you. So it means now that that I am the owner of the data actually end the moment I put it out there in the database. You see, the question of data might appear to be something very new, no? But it is not new at all, because we've been living with it. I remember, for example, that was a couple of years ago, I've written a book that I titled How to Find Your Life Purpose. Then I was talking about how to tap into your inner power, or what you call the subconscious, as it were, no? And I gave a very simple instance. Somebody might say, it doesn't have to do with data, but they have anything to do with data. Let me give you an instance. You see, the antelope is running in the Sahara, going to get water. Only that before the antelope gets to the water, he just discovered that there's a lion standing by. I say, let's freeze the moment and analyze what is happening here. Now, there is water, there is lion, there is antelope. The antelope needs water to survive, but the lion needs the antelope to survive, and of course the water too. And the antelope needs to make a decision, and they need to be very fast. Not only that, need to be very fast. but also need to be very accurate. Why? Because it's life and death depend on that decision. And I say, okay, but where is the antelope going to take the data to measure? Because it's going to do an accurate measurement. Like, what is the distance between where I am to where the lion is? In a triangle to where the water is, which is to say, if I go to take the water, can I take the water and run away before the antelope catches up on me? Because if by taking the water, I'm going to put my life in danger, I'm not going to do that. But how do you know? The antelope, we know this because there is a database that collects all the information that have ever been in existence that shows what the lion usually do to the antelope. Not only based on the antelope life, but based on the many, many years of experience. Therefore, you know what is going to happen. We're talking about data. So the question of data is very important for us in our culture, in our civilization, in business, in anything that we do. Because if we don't have data, we will not be able to build the society that we build. It will never function because you need to produce. Produce for whom? How many? What is the quantity? What is the size? The color? What is the taste? What is the weight? Because if you produce something that is too heavy for the person that you are producing it for, the person cannot lift it up. To know that the person is going to lift it up, you need the data to show what is the weight of the person in relation to what you are building and in what context. So we cannot say that data is absolutely relevant. It's one of the most important things that we should be talking about. Why are we not talking enough about it? Because, for example, in Europe, all of us were in Europe. I'm in Italy, you are in the UK. The European Union is very heavy on data. Of course, there have been many occasions that they have sued some multinational corporation coming from the United States about data. You know, when ChatGPT came up, it was not allowed to function in Italy. If you are in Italy, you could not access ChatGPT. It had to do with data. The Italian government said they don't want it until some few things are rectified. For most of us that wanted to use ChatGPT, we couldn't access it. But later, they make whatever they come to the agreement. Now, you can use it here. We are talking about data. But if it is this important, this crucial to our life and death, just like the antelope, why are we not talking about it enough?
I love that. And I completely agree. We definitely must talk about the value of data, our rights, our individual rights over the data, and organizations' accountability in the way that they use data. We need to be talking about these three things a lot more. And I'm going to give a very current and recent example just to illuminate why, you know, it's important that we continue to talk about these, you know, the value of data as an everyday thing. So as we're probably all aware, Apple recently released their latest updates. And there's a lot of, in the privacy world, there's a lot of uproar, a huge amount of uproar about this, because when you automatically enable the latest iOS updates on your phone, on your Apple device, by default, it automatically enables quite a significant number of AI features. Now, that in itself raises a lot of privacy concerns, cybersecurity concerns, data protection concerns, lots of legal concerns, because it means that on these everyday devices that we use, our iOS Apple devices, it means we have AI apps on our phone through no choice, in effect, through default, these AI apps on our phone. And we have very little knowledge as to what these apps are doing on our Apple devices and where they're going. You know, how are these apps accessing our contact information in our address book, and what are these AI apps then doing with such data? How are these AI apps accessing our banking apps on our phones, on our Apple devices? And then what are these AI apps then doing with our very sensitive banking information? How are these AI apps potentially accessing health apps on our phone? And then what are these AI apps doing with that data, and where does that data go? So you're absolutely right, Obehi. You know, we definitely need to have many, many more everyday conversations that raises awareness around the huge value of our personal data to organizations and our rights in regaining control over the data.
All right. Gloria, what do you say about the intersection between data data protection for businesses that are continuously collecting data from their client, their businesses, and other businesses that they are dealing with. They need this data for them to function. But for us, we also need to be respected, no, as individuals that are maybe putting our data there, because they cannot function without, or just like I was saying before, without data, we cannot build a society. The aeroplane cannot fly in the air without accurate data, you know. So we know we need data, but how much are we going to be protected? How do we draw the line to make sure that the ordinary people are protected in that? What do you say about that, Gloria?
So I like how you're saying, data is extremely important. And I agree. I always love saying this: data is the new gold. I mean, data is what drives society. But I have to say that, and I guess expanding on what Christina said, is that organizations have a responsibility. They have a responsibility to protect the data. That's why these laws are in place. That's why we have these regulators to try and monitor and making sure that these organizations are doing what they need to do. And I think there needs to be an also mutual understanding between organizations and individuals. Individuals, be mindful about the data that you have to share with other organizations, because not all organizations will be working in the correct way. And often I've heard people say, well, I don't mind, I don't mind sharing my data. It's fine. But people are not really thinking about what can happen to their data if it's misused or if it falls into the wrong hands. So I think there's this society now is a bit more sort of blasé about, who has their data. But I think what needs to happen is an educational piece with the general public in terms of why it's important to safeguard their data, why it's important to really understand what organizations are doing with your data. And often as well with organizations, yes, they want to collect data, but under the regulation, there is this element of data minimization. You only need to collect what is necessary. And often companies want to just collect all, like the gold rush, they want it all. But do they need it all? No. So I think organizations need to really also sit back and think about actually, what is it that what is it do we want to do as an organization? And then really think about the data that they need. And often it's much less than what they want to go out there and collect. And I think that's really important. I think that's something that organizations need to really think about and really apply the data minimization, because again, that will also reduce any sort of potential harm or risk to individuals. But I think every pillar in society has a responsibility when it comes to data. Us as individuals, data subjects, really understand what data you have out there. Be mindful about who you're sharing it with. Be really clear on the notices out there. The law is there to protect us. And also organizations understand your responsibilities when it comes to handling these individuals' personal data. But definitely applying the data minimization could really help with kind of that balance and on making sure, yes, you could do what you need to do, but also be mindful and respect people's data. So that's my 2 cents.
All right. I'm going to hang on there a bit, Gloria. Now, let's look at the acquisition of this data, the point of entrance of this data. Let's see. What would you say is the best way to collect this data? Because we need it. There is no argument about that at all. We need the data. But what is it? Because there are good ways to do it. I want to believe that there are also bad ways to do it. So your recommendation, what is the best way to acquire this data, paying attention to the respect of the people whose the data is about?
Well, yeah, as I think we've sort of said in various ways, both Gloria and I, there's a raft of legislation now and regulation, more or less globally, really, UK, Europe, globally, that in a fairly granular way kind of tells organisations what respect for data looks like. And that template, that instruction in the legislation that tells organisations what to do by way of demonstrated data protection compliance is really embedded in the principles, some of which we've spoken about today. Gloria and I have spoken about today. We've spoken about trust and accountability. We've spoken about having a lawful basis, a demonstrable reason for having the data. We've spoken about, Gloria's just mentioned data minimization, collecting just what you need for the clearly identified purpose. There are other principles around retention, keeping the data for an appropriate length of time to allow you to use it for what you need to use it for, and then securely and confidentially and permanently destroy it when you don't need it. Be mindful of where it goes, make sure it's adequately protected, password protected, antivirus protection, penetration tests, apply, appropriate cybersecurity controls to demonstrate that you're adequately protecting the data. So there are, there's a checklist of things that organisations need to do to routinely demonstrate that they are data protection compliant.
Okay. Gloria will say something to the effect that data is a new gold. And I think it is true. Now, when you look at Africa, for example, and we are going to be talking about marketing, production and distribution, network, finance, I tend to believe that we don't have enough data in circulation in the sense of an accumulation of data that can easily be accessed. This way, if you are going to market to people, sometimes you don't have enough information. But of course, if you are living within the people, they're living within the geographical area, you might know. But say, maybe for example, you are in Kaduna, in Nigeria, you want to produce goods that you're going to distribute to people in Lagos, it's going to be pretty much challenging for you to know the data to have access to the data that you need to be able to produce for these people. And if you don't have enough data, like I was saying before, it's always going to be very challenging. So, of course, in places like New York or in Europe or in the West, let's say so, there is a lot of data in circulation. It's very easy for you to access all this data. That is why there is a lot of law also in the protection of the data, because you have the thing that you are talking about. Because Gloria said that data is a new gold. How do we pump in more data into the African market server so that those that are in marketing, those that are in production, those that want to produce things and distribute, we have access to this data? Okay, I want to say that if you look at the advent of internet, a lot of information have actually emerged from Africa into the internet server, to the global server. Okay, let me back up a bit. You see, before Nollywood came up, which is the Nigerian film industry, people have very little knowledge of what is actually the reality of Africa in the West. The only thing that they knew or they have a knowledge of about Africa are some very horrible films that were made by Hollywood about Africa. And it was very demeaning and disgraceful. But when Nollywood came up, they decided to show Africa in a new light. And if you are wondering, why is it that it is highly appreciated among African diaspora? Because it presented Africa in a different new light. These are data, these are information that are coming up. Now, when internet came, now we have mobile phone, you don't need to say, how does Africa look like? Just go online, you can see it. People are showing it the way they are. They are showing the ugly, they are showing the beautiful, they are showing everything. So these are data. You can't say, oh, I don't know, I think that they are on the tree. No, you can see it, it's evident. So despite that, we still have less data to be able to measure what is actually happening there in terms of planning for the future. So how do we get more data into the hands of those who want to plan for the future? That is going to be my question.
Yeah, I've got a bit of a view on that.
Yeah,
Gloria.
And also, because when you say, obviously, we're data protection professionals. So when we say data, we mean personal data. So I know what you talk about, this other kind of data, the aggregated data, statistical data, that might not necessarily mean personal data. So I'm going to bring it back to personal data. But I think in those countries and the continent of Africa, if they are wanting more data for marketing, etc., let me just say something about Africa in general and many of the countries there. They are developing many of the countries are starting to develop, data protection laws. Nigeria already has data protection regulations there. And you've got South Africa as well. Many of the countries are starting to develop. So they are becoming aware of privacy and data protection issues for their subjects. And I have to say as well that Nigeria, I think they recently gave a very big fine to a tech company. So Africa's there, Africa is understanding. And in terms of trying to collect data in the right way to get more data, I think it's about transparency. I think if organizations are wanting to do data for the good of people to really market, bring things to the attention of the individuals, transparency, be very clear as to what you want to do. That's, I think, the first step. And then you will build trust. And in terms of trying to build a brand, build a business, build a relationship with your consumers, your customers, your clients, it's all about trust. So these individuals need to trust this organization. And I think we start with being very transparent, being very clear as to what you want to do to that data. Because like you said, people are aware of these incidences, these breaches that have happened. So it's also at the same time, people are very cautious of organizations. And then you have the other side that people don't care. So you kind of get the both extremes. But I think for an organization who want to collect data in an ethical, compliant way, you need to start with being transparent. You need to start being very clear as to what you're doing and why you want to collect that data. And of course, being transparent, you need to make sure what you're doing is lawful and also what you're doing is fair. So even if you're saying to people, oh, we're going to do this and that with data, is it fair what you're doing with data? You need to be thinking like that. And I think it's really important for organizations that want to grow to, I guess, become more aware of the privacy elements in their countries. And for those countries that might not have developed data protection laws, look to the GDPR. Look to those countries and those regions that do have developed data protection laws and use that as a best practice tool. And I think, again, that will build trust for your consumers, for your customers, because you can say, well, yes, this country might not have laws, but we are following the practices in Europe, in that aspect. And I have to say that with the data protection law in Nigeria, it's heavily mirrored on the GDPR, and many countries are actually mirrored on the GDPR because it's seen as the best practice. It's seen as the law that really is protecting individuals' data. So I think, that's where organizations need to start with and then build from there.
Thank you for that. It's like, Gloria, you were saying, Christina, you were saying you wanted to add something to that. Could you please go on?
Yeah, sure. So, I absolutely agree with everything that Gloria and even yourself have said today at Obehi about the, data being the new gold. And this will be the case in, the modern economy and, forward-thinking businesses, more so with AI, the rapid evolution of AI. But hoarding data and just collecting data for the sake of collecting data, poor quality data of no historical value, no commercial value, is pointless. It's pointless and risky. It's pointless because, to Gloria's point around trust, it's pointless because it doesn't build trust with your customers, your clients, your consumers. If you build a business on based on a reputation that's about data hoarding, that does not build trust with your clients and consumers and customers. And furthermore, you're just exposing yourself to litigation and risk under data protection legislation. It's increasingly, we are, all of us who work in workplaces and work for businesses and develop businesses, we're working in a globally connected world from a business and commerce point of view. So collecting data for the sake of collecting data, regardless of the quality of it or the commercial value of it, is it's not a winning long-term strategy from a legal point of view and even from a commercial point of view.
I have to say as well, I remember, and I think we've all spoken about this, advising businesses when they want to collect data because it's nice to have, and you have to tap them on the hand and say, you can't do that. You can't just collect data because maybe one day it might be useful. And I think that's often where businesses fall and they fall over themselves on. They see it there, see something shiny, let's take it. It might be useful in the future, but that's a no-no. We shouldn't be doing that. And I totally agree with what you're saying.
All right, Gloria, what do you recommend for businesses who maybe are new and they yet do not even understand what is meant by GDPR? What does that even mean, GDPR? What do you say about that?
I'll let you answer this actually, Christine.
Okay. So the GDPR, we didn't break it down, did we, at the beginning? We should have. The GDPR stands for General Data Protection Regulation. So it's European, UK data protection legislation predominantly, but as Gloria's quite rightly said, it has really set the global gold standard for what good, high quality data protection regulation looks like. And in a nutshell, Obehi, as you say, what is it? Well, firstly, it sets out the template that organisations ought to follow in demonstrating and respecting personal data. And the other aspect to it is that it raises awareness considerably of individuals' privacy rights with regards to the data that we entrust organisations with. And I mean, there's a huge backstory and historical development to the evolution of GDPR and data protection regulation. But I think it's fair to say that it's the, if I can be bold enough to say this, it's really the aggressive data mining of big tech firms that, and the fact that we, data ends up in digital technology and we very often don't know where it goes or how it's used. It's those two things that really led to the evolution of GDPR and related legislation.
Is it possible to say that there are too much data?
I think, yes, that's a good question. And I'm hesitating because I do see the value of data, but I think what I see is that it goes back to what Gloria said before. What I see in organisations is that there's a huge amount of data in organisations, but there's very limited understanding, knowledge or awareness of the real value of this data hoarding habit that organisations have developed. For me, that is the issue. There is a lot of data hoarding that's unjustified.
All right. Is it what it may be, for example, somebody that is within the global tech giant might say, well, the Privacy Act that we talked about often about data collection is sort of stopping them from doing their work, that they need more data so that they'll be able to expand more and learn more so that they can provide better service. So we definitely need data. But what if maybe they say, because there is privacy, you are saying you need to respect it, people might not be able to release their data. If people don't release their data, there will be lack of data and all of that. What if they make that as an argument? What would you say to counterbalance that?
What do these organisations want to do? That's the first question. What is that they want to do? Because from that, you can ascertain whether or not what they want to do is fair, is justified. Because when I hear sometimes organisations wanting to, just like Christina was saying, just collect data, they don't really have a clear purpose. It feels like they want to collect data to then figure out what it is that they want to do. And it should be the other way around. It should be, okay, this is what we want to do. And they, align it to it's been fair, it's needed for the business, etc., etc. And now let's look at how we can ethically collect the data. I think that's if businesses start thinking like that, they won't get into that muddle. Because I think that the information is there, but sometimes they don't understand what it is that they want to do, so they feel like they have to collect more to give them that answer. But I think if they just think about what their business plan is, what their objectives are, what it is that they want to do very clearly, and that should guide them in terms of what data they need, and whether or not what they want to achieve is allowed by law. Because if you want to be a successful business, you need to have a clear purpose, and of course it has to be legal. And I keep ramming this, but it needs to be fair. It needs to be justified. And this is again expanding on what Christina said in terms of why the GDPR was put in place. It was put in place to, harmonise data protection, the law across the European countries to, I guess, in some places, increase the level of protection in those countries that were flaking. They weren't doing what they should be doing in terms of protecting personal data. Because you had countries like Germany, Spain that were very good in protecting personal data, and then you had other countries that really didn't do much. Even though there was a law there, a directive there, they weren't really doing much. So what the GDPR has done has increased the standard and level and said, at a minimum, this is what you need to be doing to protect data. And I think this is where organizations are now trying to, maybe some organizations are fighting back. They're saying, well, all these laws, these red tapes. Well, actually, no, it's personal data. It's someone's data. You still need to protect it in a certain way. You still need to have that responsibility. It's not stopping you from doing what you want to do. It might be that they can't get there like this, and they might have to do some little things and hoops to do it. But you can still do what you need to do, but you just need to be compliant. You need to do it in an ethical way. And I think some organizations, maybe that's what's, dare I say it, but I think a lot of organizations are trying their best. And again, I think with large organizations, it can be difficult. It can be difficult. I'm not going to say it's not. And you've got with the UK, they're going to look at, they have a new bill to change the data protection laws there, because even though the UK is obviously out of the European Union, the current law is a mirror of the GDPR. But they are looking to update the laws in the UK, for example. And often it's said to kind of make it a bit less bureaucratic for organizations and a bit more, so they can use data a bit more easier. But I just think that organizations really need to start with a clear business objective. What is it they want to do with that data very clearly, rather than looking for the data to give them that idea.
I've got a question for you. Now, you are spending all this time talking about data protection, privacy, and all of that. Why?
It's important for some of the reasons that we've already mentioned. Data is the new gold. Data is everywhere. There's a lot of data hoarding. There's a lack of awareness of, individuals' privacy rights. As Gloria's just mentioned, the bar needs to be raised within many organisations, even though we have got the harmonisation, we have got a very sophisticated global data protection legislation and GDPR at the moment. But there is people like me and Gloria and other privacy professionals, we are still in work because there's still work to be done. So, it's hugely important. And I know I've said it before, but I'm going to say it again. More so with AI, with AI, I was going to say with AI coming, AI is here and growing. AI is growing because it's built on data. That will have an impact on our data rights and our privacy rights. So awareness of our privacy rights and data protection compliance is more important now more than ever, because literally with AI, so without AI, with the way data processing is going in digital technologies, modern digital technologies, the real challenge with data processing is that we really don't know. There is a lack of transparency. We really don't know where the data is going, where it will end up, how it will be used, and how it will be accessed. So we have GDPR-related legislation to govern all of that. Now, with AI, that problem around transparency is worsened.
Yes.
Because with the AI models, we actually don't really always consistently know how these AI models work in terms of the way they are accessing data, the way that the algorithms are configured to process the data, and the outputs, the results of all of that, and then the impact on individuals as a result of all of that. A lot of these things are generally unknown on a regular routine basis. So why is it important? Why are privacy regulations important? Hugely important to govern the way data is used in the digital world, and more so in the AI world, in the AI-powered world that we're now in.
How they operate, we don't know.
Yeah. So as I say, it's quite scary, all of this, because and Christina's absolutely right. AI, I feel like AI is kind of how it was when the internet came into place. Before the internet, before computerization, it was all paper files. Everything was stored in papers. If someone had a computer somewhere, and then the internet came, that kind of brought its own risk and questions, and I feel it's still there. But now we haven't even sort of resolved that, and then there's AI on top of it, and so it is a big thing. And like you say, with transparency, and then the whole you have to explain why, be able to explain why things are happening in terms of AI. It's a crazy time, if I can say that in that way. It's a crazy time and exciting time to be a privacy professional, but it's yeah.
I like that. But is it true that we don't really know how a function, or okay, what I mean is it that we ordinary people, they don't know how a function, or those who make the law, in this case the government, don't know how a function, or they actually know how a function, because of course they're the one licensing this company to operate. Of course, if you listen to the hearing of Mark Zuckerberg, or maybe Google CEO be grilled in the House, you will see the technicality of the question that they are asking them. You will understand that many of these people really understand what is happening there. Of course, okay, there is a limit to maybe what we can discuss on that. That most of these tech company already have a kind of insight into what they don't just carry out technology and just put it in the people that start experimenting on that. Maybe some of them have already been experimented on several years, sometimes up to like 50, 30 years before they bring it out to the open. A couple of years ago, we started to hear people talking about seeing something flying in the air. People were speculating that the alien were flying in the air. Only that soon we start to realize that things can actually fly in the air without human being in it, which is nothing more than a drone. But the military have been experimenting on this for several years. Only that what we were seeing in the air, we couldn't explain it in the normal way, that this is an aeroplane. What could we say? This is an UFO. It's in the air. The military know what is in the air. The government know what's in the air. So I am saying, in a sense, that maybe if they want to make a law that can favor the people in terms of protecting their privacy and all of that, they know what to do. Maybe it is the ordinary people that don't know yet what is happening, but they know what is happening inside this big tech. Maybe I'm overstating that.
I agree with you completely, and I don't think you're overstating it at all. And I know we've talked about it a lot today in terms of transparency and accountability, and we've spoke about the regulation and regulators who are there to enforce it. But we as individual data subjects need to hold organisations to account. We need to be working alongside the regulators, if you like, to hold organisations to account. And that's why the privacy rights are there. We need to be, as individual data subjects, we must, if we are ever unsure, and actually I'm saying this for the listeners, for listeners who, particularly for listeners who are looking after vulnerable people in the community, it's really important that if we are ever unsure about the way an organisation is using our data, other people's data, vulnerable person's data, exercise your privacy rights and ask. There's one key, well, there are several privacy rights, but one key right that's very, very popular it's called the data subject access request. And what that right means is us as individual data subjects have the right to approach any organisation that holds our data, and we can ask them to more or less fully disclose the personal data that they hold on us, and ask them to account for why they have it, how they're using it, where it's going, how they're protecting it, how they're keeping it secure, who they're sharing it with, and so on. So going back to one of your earlier questions about why this is important, this is hugely important because we must, as Black privacy professionals, we are hugely passionate about raising awareness of not only what we do as privacy professionals, but we're hugely passionate about raising awareness of privacy rights, because organisations need to be held to account. And yes, we rely on regulators to hold organisations to account, but us as individual subjects, there are privacy rights that we can exercise to further hold organisations to account.
All right. BPPN, that is your organization, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Can you explain that? What does that mean?
Yes. So BPPN is the abbreviation for the UK Black Privacy Professionals Network. I'm the founder for the UK Black Privacy Professionals Network, and I've got Gloria here, who's a key steering group member. And we developed the organisation 2 summers ago now, July 2023. We now have 150 members, and we're growing. And we are the leading voice at the moment. We are the UK's leading voice for Black privacy professionals. And we have 2 main broad objectives. One is around upskilling. We come together as a community to support each other's learning, sharing in our lifelong learners' journey to continually upskill ourselves and remain fresh and relevant in terms of our continuous professional development. So upskilling is one thing that we're hugely passionate about and supporting each other on. And the other goal is around our visibility and our voice. We want to amplify our visibility and voice within the privacy community as Black privacy professionals, as aspirational and ambitious Black privacy professionals. And we also want to amplify our visibility and voice on public platforms, on LinkedIn, on social media, high profile privacy events. We want to see more privacy professionals that look like us at high profile privacy events as delegates, as speakers, as keynote speakers, as panel speakers. So that's who we are, UK Black Privacy Professionals, or BPPN for short, and we're all about upskilling and amplifying our voice and visibility in the space.
Thank you so much for that. All right, Gloria, what is so fascinating for you in this organization? Why are you here?
I feel like I just copy and paste everything that Christina said, but I'm here to, I guess, as well, to really join a network where other people look like me in privacy. There's so many Black people in the privacy space, but as Christina mentioned, often I've gone to talks, I've gone to events, and I'll see ourselves in the crowd, but I don't see us on the panels. I don't see, like she said, as keynote speakers, and then you'll maybe look at some companies with the organizations. You don't see Black people maybe in the leadership teams, etc. But we have the skills, we have the understanding, and I think it's also, I love the network because it's an opportunity to come together, share ideas, share understanding in a safe space. Also, as well, share the challenges that we might have as well. But again, I also wanted to join this organisation because, like Christina said, it's even just more than the professional element, but also about understanding how we can, work with the community in terms of Black data, if I can dare say that. And it's just really, I guess, a network to really understand and come together and collaborate on data protection and privacy with people that look like us. And I see it's no different from, if it was with regards to gender, if it was with regards to someone's disability. We're a minority group, and we want to have that opportunity to come together and discuss those issues that we all face. So I'm really, really grateful for this group. It's really been great. It's accelerated so much so quickly, and no, it's brilliant. It's really great. Well done. Thank you, Christina.
No, but thank you. Gloria's passion and energy to really lift and elevate individual members and the entire network is unprecedented. Gloria does so much behind the scenes that many people just don't see. And a lot of our success is down to Gloria's passion and energy, the passion and energy that, again, many don't see from our steering group. We have other steering group members, and we'll always be hugely grateful to our 150 plus members who have, I feel, really invested trust in us, the steering group, in our confidence, our vision to really achieve something big for the Black privacy professionals community. I'm hugely grateful not only to Gloria and the steering group, I'm hugely grateful to our members who very early on, continually, and now have invested, I feel, a huge amount of trust and confidence in enabling us to lead what feels like a huge ship into the future to just elevate and amplify our visibility and voice.
Yeah, and our partners as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
agreed.
What is in the future? Tell us a bit about what you see in the future of this organization.
So, I mean, on a daily or regular basis, it goes back to what Gloria and I have just said. You know, I want to see every day, I want to see and work with and talk to Black privacy professionals every single day of the week. I want to see Black privacy professionals posts, LinkedIn posts in my feed every day. I want to go to particularly high profile privacy events and see many more Black privacy professionals as delegates, panel speakers and keynote speakers. I want to see in the workplace, global firms, UK firms, European firms. Globally, I want to see many more Black privacy professionals on the board at C-suite levels, occupying the most senior privacy positions in firms, in companies, in organisations. This is my ambition. The one where we get a lot of feedback and a lot of member testimonials from our members, but the one piece of feedback that really resonates with me is, wow, 150 Black privacy professionals in the UK. I just don't see them on LinkedIn. How is it that we have come together as a network and, you know, amplified our visibility in this way? For me, this is the power of our network. We are just much more visible because we have come together. And I want to see more of that, not only within our community, but, you know, at external events, on public platforms like LinkedIn in particular, and certainly in the workplace, in the most senior privacy roles on boards or at C-suite level. I want to see many, many more Black privacy professionals taking up space in those places.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. I really do. All right. Now, Gloria, what would be your final thought here for those who have listened to you? First, tell them how they can find you and how would you like to conclude the conversation?
Okay, so yes, you can find us on our website. It's www.blackprivacyprofessionalsnetwork.com. And you can also find a group on LinkedIn. It's a public group on there. And you can also reach out to any of us for any questions that you may have. If you're privacy professionals, please do join. Also, we do have really good partners that we work with. And that we have a really good relationship with. So if you're also interested in being a partner with the network, please also reach out. Because we just want to grow. We want to, improve the diversity, showcase the diversity, and we also, want to work with our allies as well, etc. So we just want to expand. This year is a year of expansion. This year is a year of, doing some work out there and really getting people to understand why we're here. And one of the things, and Christina's also already mentioned it, is that this network was needed. And I sometimes think, what were we doing before? It was needed. And so I'm very excited for where this network is going to go and how it's going to grow. And so please do support us and reach out to us for any questions that you may have.
All right, Christina, how would you conclude this conversation? What is your final thought? And how can people reach out to you? Of course, I see Gloria already mentioned that.
Yeah, thank you, Gloria. I obviously share Gloria's passion for the future. This year is this is our third year of coming together and working together. This year very much is about us coming together to connect, collaborate, and continually grow and elevate, working with people that look like us, that do what we do in terms of connection, collaboration, and building a community and growing and elevating. And as Gloria said, working with our many, many more corporate partners, sponsors and organisations and allies. We've got one key event coming up that will enable that. We are organising a roundtable event this year where we will be looking to our members to come together to share their experience around being a Black privacy professional and some of the challenges and barriers to rise in career progression. But as part of the roundtable discussion, we will be working with allies, corporate sponsors, leaders, change makers, key decision makers who can unblock some of those barriers to really elevate career progression for Black privacy professionals. So I suppose I want to close out by sort of saying, yes, we have big plans, huge ambitions, and this year is very much around connecting, collaborating to grow and elevate the community.
Thank you so much, Christina, and also to you, Gloria. I appreciate the time and the value that you added here, and I believe the people that have listened to us till the end of this conversation, they have a lot of value to get out of here. And of course, I remind all of you that have listened to this point in the conversation, if you want to learn more, these two gentle ladies, they are here available. You can reach out to them, and why not collaborate with them? That is what we continue to promote here in Obehi Podcast and also in A-Classes Media. We believe that no one can do it alone, but when we put our efforts together, then there is nothing that we cannot do. So if what you hear here make any sense to you, let us know. You can even start by making a comment. Let us hear which part of this conversation resonate better with you. We are interested in learning from you. Maybe you don't even believe in what you are saying. Maybe you don't agree with us. It's okay. Say it. And we want you to be part of the conversation. Because like I said, data is one of the most essential elements for our survival as a human being. Not only as a human being, we can see, I gave you an example of the antelope. That is how life is based on data. And of course, we are also talking of how do we respect those we are taking those data from? Because it is important. You can't ignore that. So this will be really very, very important conversation. So I thank you to both of you, gentle ladies. It will be really a pleasure here talking with you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you
for
so
the
much.
opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you very much.